welcome to episode 2 of the Garden Revival BBQ. BBQ, as you all know, stands for Big Burning Questions. We all have them, and we all need them answered sometimes. I am your host, IG, the server's illegal guardian, and co-hosting with me is my tech support and my moral support, Space Butler. Our panel today is ecologist and plant lover, Passiflora, and professional gardener, Zappy Snaps. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hey there.
Hey.
So, how is everybody dealing with winter?
I'm cold stratifying a ton of seeds and buying more plants.
I was going to say I read that you got some, am I pronouncing this right, Mitagina speciosa to germinate? I'm probably butchering that really bad.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I say Mitragina speciosa too, so...
It's either that or Mitragina.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And why was that such a big deal, Passy?
Well, apparently online, people always talk about them being a plant that the seeds, most of them don't germinate regardless, and then even fewer of them will not germinate once they've, have been off of the tree for couple days, weeks, or they say if you can get it to germinate after even a couple months, you're incredibly lucky. And meanwhile, I got a bunch of seeds to germinate that are over 2 years old. So
that's incredible.
I did.
Congratulations.
Pretty awesome.
What about you, Zappy? What have you been up to?
I have been really enjoying my indoor garden with my passion fruit and eating ripe passion fruit in Washington State in January is, that's an experience. That's pretty fun. And, I
so
also
cool
have
that you can grow them indoors. That's just, I still can't wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
I saw that picture on Instagram. Looks amazing.
Right. It's a lot of fun, and I definitely don't think it's a plant that most people would have indoors because, mine is currently growing from the floor to the ceiling and is at least 6 feet wide. And then I'm also growing tomatoes and basil and cilantro and green onions indoors, and it's finally stopped raining enough that I can actually work outside, which is really exciting for me because as a gardener, I don't have a lot of time during the growing season to tend my own garden, so I'm trying to set it up this year so that if I don't have time to water or weed, it'll be fine, and I can just go out there to pick, vegetables and fruits once they're ready.
So I take it your soil isn't frozen?
Didn't even freeze last night, right? We're in the middle of January, and it's still in these sometimes
That's
bopping
nice
up to 50,
for
but yeah,
January.
it's been unseasonably warm.
That's nice. I'm not even going to ask Passy about his soil because that's 100% frozen.
All frozen. It's so frozen.
Yeah, it just makes me worried because last year it was kind of like this in January too, and then in the summer we had a massive heat wave for here, which I realized for other people 110 degrees is normal, but for here it was literally record breaking, literally hotter than I had seen in my good 10 degrees. So it's making me worried that it'll be in this year, so I guess we'll see.
Well, hopefully it'll be a little more gentle on you.
I hope so.
You told me today that you started a TikTok. Is that because you're incredibly bored?
Yeah. If you were to go look at my first few videos, last year in December, I was I'm bored, so I say that in the TikTok. And then I did the same thing this year, but then I kept making videos. But yeah, it was okay, I'm stuck inside. There's nothing to do. I need something to do. So
are they all garden related?
They are almost all garden or houseplant related.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll have to share that with our audience.
Sure.
Can't wait to see.
Sorry, what?
I was gonna see if Passy maybe is into TikTok.
Actually not. I
No.
yeah, I don't know what it is about it. I just can't. I don't know why. I just don't really like watching, I guess, like videos in general, and then TikTok, it guess its algorithm just hates me, and
Oh.
it never was able to
Oh,
like give me like useful or nice videos I enjoyed watching. So I don't
Oh.
really have it, but my girlfriend has TikTok, and so she just sends me all the cute animal videos that she likes, and I'll just inevitably like them too. So
Now you can't help it. I mean,
yeah.
you're only human. All right, let's get to the questions. Space Butler, what's on the list? What is first?
All right. So Mitanshu says, or asks, I should say, oil doesn't mix in water, so somebody told me to add shampoo to it. Will shampoo cause any harm? So I assume this is relating to some kind of oil like neem oil or something that they would apply to their plants.
so what I would say is I wouldn't use shampoo. And perhaps I said that with a bit too much judgment in my voice, but what people do use is a little bit of soap, like just a little bit of dish soap, and um, that's fine. You're using a small enough amount, it should be fine. It's widely recommended and used, so I wouldn't worry about it so long as you're using soap. I feel like you would probably want to stick to a more simple one. But I don't know. I guess I just have this idea that shampoos have more weird stuff in them than soap does, so just stick with the more simple thing. But
Would you recommend Castile soap over something that has SLS in it, or what are the other things? Maybe glycerin is a more gentle thing.
I mean, yeah, Castile's trope would be fine. I don't tend to worry too much about other things, but if that's something that someone does have concerns about or knows that they have issues with, yeah, just pick one that doesn't have those. I do know people sometimes, I don't want to say brand names, right? But I keep hearing the dish soaps that you use in your kitchen mentioned a lot. So
All right. So we have another question from Drifty. What are the best ways to enjoy growing gardens indoors while also preventing your pets from eating your plant babies, especially the plants that will make pets sick? So I think this is a general concern that a lot of people have. They have indoor plants and they have indoor animals. And what's the best way to separate these two?
in my experience, it helps to have a lazy cat. But then my housemate got a cat, and her cat was not lazy, so I had to move my plants up higher. I moved a lot of my plants to a different room that the cat did not have access to, and I kind of made one of my shelving units. I kind of made it so it had walls, so the cat just couldn't get to the plants because she really decided that she really wanted to eat the spider plants. It's like that's not a good choice for you. Please stop. And I see people buying those IKEA glassed-in cabinets, so there it goes. Going and getting one of those or finding one used, just creating a barrier is the best in my experience. Because I know people will
Cage your
try.
pets, cage your plants, right?
No, cage the plants. No, I definitely meant cage the plants. I feel like you would have a rather unhappy cat otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I've heard of people using nasty tasting or nasty smelling sprays, but A, you're going to be smelling, and B, they just don't really seem to work for really persistent animals.
All right. We have a question here from Sato. how do I identify and or verify quality bonsai tools?
Price tag.
More expensive is usually better. I suppose that works with a lot of things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
unfortunately. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't have too much bonsai experience, so I probably wouldn't be the best person to answer this.
Right. And I was going to say I have no bonsai experience, but I do have experience with a lot of tools. And one of the things that I think helps is actually picking up the tool and testing it out and, feeling its heft. If it's something that cuts, how well does it move through its whole range of motion? Like, test it out, because honestly, I often do think price is pretty predictive, but my favorite pair of clippers is actually like a quarter of the cost of the other clippers, and they just are workhorses and work really well. So test them out if possible.
Cool about this, and that's exactly the advice he gave, which is hard to do when you're shopping on Amazon.
Yeah, no, for real.
I think another good piece of advice, well, if I'm going to pat myself on the back for giving good advice here, would be to just take really good care of all your tools, and they will work well. You gotta sharpen them, you gotta clean them, you gotta not leave them sitting in a wet spot. So
You're making me feel really guilty right now, just so you know.
Oh, I'm telling you what you should be doing, not what I'm doing. What's next, Space Butler?
You can get a lot of rust on tools very fast if you leave them outside.
Yeah, well, true. Space Butler is my cleaner, if you know what I mean. And I don't mean anything by it. He just cleans my tools.
I take care of, if there's an individual that is causing an issue.
Yeah, that kind of cleaner. But we don't talk about it. Next.
No, that's for a different podcast. So Cleanser says, I've got tiny tomatoes and open them to take out the seeds. Should I just let them dry out, or is there something else I should do? So how to plant tomato seeds?
So the classic recommendation is to ferment your tomato seeds, because it will increase the germination rate when you then go to plant them later. And I used to do that a lot more than I do now, because one year I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to put them on a piece of paper and let them dry out and see what happens. And I still got a 75% germination rate, which to me, if you're willing to thin, and I know some people feel horrible about thinning seedlings, but if you're willing to thin, you can just sow extra, and then if remove the extra that show up, or transplant them out and give them to someone else if you feel bad about it. But yeah, typically you let them ferment in a glass jar and they get all moldy and goopy, and then you pour that stuff out and you have clean seeds, which is nice.
Interesting.
Yeah, but at this point I just smear them on a piece of paper and dry it out, and then fold it up and label it and say, well, this is this variety from this year.
And I do the same thing too. I just smear them on paper towel and I let it dry, and I've never had issues with germination rates. So,
I mean, I've heard of people just plant a slice and it works. At least a few of the seeds will take, and that's all you need.
That will work just fine, but then you're planting the whole tomato slice, and you could just eat the tomato slice and plant the seeds. Sorry, I've seen just a few too many.
Excellent point.
Like they'll cut a whole tomato in half and put the whole tomato in a pot, and I'm like, but you could eat the tomato.
Or you could just leave a few tomatoes hanging on your plants over winter, and somehow they plant themselves. They just fall to the ground and the seeds germinate.
Yeah.
That's what Bubs does.
I think Bubs must be in a warmer climate or a warmer summer
No,
anyway. 'cause-
she's actually in zone 5, I believe. And their winter
Oh,
last
well.
year went down to negative 30 something Fahrenheit. And she still had some
That
volunteer
sounds
tomatoes this
horrible.
year.
That ripened all the way? Because all of cherries ripened,
think
but
so.
like anything bigger than a cherry does not ripen on its own here.
Oh, huh. We'll have to talk to Bubs about that.
So, Xenogerm asks, are all barks made equal when using in container soil? I watched a video that said bark mulch is different than wood mulch.
The short answer is there is a difference. There's like one or two kinds that are more resistant to breaking down in the soil mix, I believe is what I found. And yeah, wood chips are completely different than bark. Wood chips are really best used as a mulch because they do break down, and as they break down, if you mix them into your soil, they're going to pull nitrogen from the soil. That's why you leave them as a mulch, because then they pull the nitrogen from the air.
So are there different different trees, they take the bark from different trees and it has different properties in the soil?
Yeah, exactly. Like some trees' bark is more resinous and more resistant to breaking down, and you want the most resinous and resistant to breaking down, I believe. I think it's funny. I think I recall that they said for the East Coast you wanted to look for cypress bark, I think, and over here, oh gosh.
The bark is something you would be using for orchids, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and
you
other
can-
epiphytic things.
And you can mix that into potting mix to help. Is it with aeration?
And compaction.
Um,
I actually
Yeah.
used it for a couple of rainforest trees, and it just keeps the soil kind of like looser overall.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looked like ground Google, right? Ground coastal redwood or fir or a kind of tree fern fiber. That's interesting. Yeah, because as a person who works outside in gardens, I go to the yard, the landscaper supply store, and they have these huge piles of bark, and I'm like, can I just get some of that and use that? And I think I can if it's Doug fir.
Nice.
Oh. Yeah, if you have a local supply, then I guess ask the people in your area.
Yeah.
Okay. Kalanchoy Lovers asks about dormancy tips for winter succulents or cacti or houseplants, how to deal with or is this I don't know, is this how to make them dormant or how to cope with them being dormant?
Well, to cope with them being dormant, you're going to want to water less and fertilize less and just keep an eye on them in general. But
Do you
to
want them
make
to go dormant?
with some, yes, because it's not a super strong dormancy like you'll see in like daffodils where it just completely dies down to the bulb. They just like have a pause, and you want them to do that because then that triggers their blooming in a lot of succulent species. So for Christmas cactuses, everyone knows with Christmas and Thanksgiving cactuses, their bloom period is triggered because they get less light or because they're exposed to colder temperatures. So depending on what you're trying to get to go dormant, you're going to want to look up that specific thing and find out what temperature range or what light duration or darkness duration is what they need to trigger that dormancy period.
Will indoor, like houseplants and succulents and that sort of thing, have dormancy effects from the quality of sunlight that you get, even though the the house that you're keeping them in is still fairly warm?
Yeah, so again, depending on the species, like Christmas cactus, they can do either. But like if you're not supplementing the light, here at least, maybe if you're closer to the equator, there's not a noticeable difference, but here at least, they're getting way less light and they're getting less light both in the intensity of that light, but also in the duration of that. Like it's going to be dark for, I don't know, a really long time. 16 hours a day, right? Of darkness. So those plants that are sensitive to photoperiod or how long they are in darkness are going to react to that. Unless you have a grow light or forget your laundry room light on for a really long time.
It sounds like you're speaking from experience there.
Yeah, so the thing is with some of them, even one day of not getting the amount of darkness they need is enough to delay it. So my Christmas cactus is blooming now because one night I didn't catch it and my housemate left the laundry room light on all night.
That is very sensitive.
Yep, it's really, yeah. Some people even go so far as stuffing them in a closet every day to make sure, like they take it into the closet and take it out of the closet every day just to make sure it has the right photo period.
That is dedication.
Yeah, that's way more dedicated than I am. I'm like, okay, so it's in January, that's fine.
And there
Passy,
are
do you have a lot of issues with this?
Somewhat. I mean, like there are a lot of plants up here where they go into a winter dormancy and based on not just like light but also temperature and night length, but then also CO2 concentrations in the air. And with that one, it's because as the northern hemisphere goes closer into winter, globally you see CO2 increasing, and then that actually can trigger these plants to also go into a dormancy. It's like that for a lot of different kind of pine trees and whatnot.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so for that, I mean, there's really nothing a person can do to control that aside from like breathing around their plant more if you had a potted pine plant. So that's a little tricky, and unfortunately, I am the kind of person who was actually shuffling around plants into like the shed and whatnot to give them the full 12 or 14 hours of pure night, no matter what. Because for some plants, they are very sensitive with that. But then there are other plants, like I have a bunch of butterwort plants, and they're supposed to go into a dormancy apparently, and I've had them for 5 or 6 years, and I've never done that.
Wow.
And they're alive and they're kicking, they grow like crazy, and they've not once shown any issues. So, yeah.
Wow.
Huh. Okay. Hypersphere asks, what plants can you use on a field of clay to make it more soily without the use of fertilizer over 5 to 10 years? So, what's good for growing your soil quality over the long term, I guess?
So I've actually done this, and I want to say I'm really glad that they put that time frame, because the most important part of the transformation is patience. And so what I've found really useful is using a lot of mulch and, pretty nutritive mulch. Like I'm not putting bark down, I'm putting wood chips down, and putting straw down, and putting down moldy hay that you can get for free from farmers where their hay got rained on, fall leaves, that sort. And then what I'll also do is in the springtime, I will plant potatoes, because potatoes are great because they will put up with a lot, right? So you put potatoes on the ground and you bury them under a foot of hay, and they're fine. They come up right through, and then all you have to do to harvest them is pull the hay off of them. It's great. And then the other thing I've done is just sow a mix of cover crops, and over time that will make a pretty big difference. So I used scarlet clover and daikon radish in a kind of mix, And so I've been here 5 years now. And when I first got here, my soil in the front of the yard was just this tannish, dead-looking clay with like a 1/4 inch of organic matter at the top. And I was out there digging earlier because I wanted to see how it looked, and I could not find a spot that looked bad anymore. The organic matter layer is now like 5 to 6 inches deep. And
Amazing.
since this was like really bad soil and me being super hands off because for most of this time, I was a teacher and really overwhelmed. So it did not get a lot of attention, right? So through patience, time, and a lot of mulch, you really can make a huge difference.
Awesome.
That sounds good to me. Let nature do the work for you.
Yeah.
If you have the patience, which I'm not sure I do.
That's where
Patience
the
is a
potatoes
virtue.
come in.
I want
Because the
flowers,
potatoes-
and I want them now.
Sure. Aw.
So here's a question that won't that I'm sure everybody can agree on. Hypersphere asks, "What's your favorite color of plant?"
There's only one right answer,
Purple.
by the way.
It's
Oh.
green.
Oops.
I know this one.
Yeah.
I'm
You
gonna
guys
stick with
thinking,
purple.
is this hard?
No, purple is my favorite. I don't, obviously I like plants that I eat, but if I can't eat it, I want it to be really neat. And I just, I look around my plant room and I've got like the purpley succulents, I've got the purpley tradescantias, and it's like, it's just such a good color on a plant, really.
I do like purple, and I like purple foliage a lot. I prefer purple foliage to red foliage. It might be
yeah.
a minor difference, but I don't know, like the purple.
I think it's a pretty big difference, and I feel like I probably am a little biased against red foliage because around here, everyone planted those red-leaved ornamental plums, and I just get so tired of seeing that particular shade
can
of red. I'm just
happen.
like, come on.
Yeah, I'm kind of allergic to plants that I see in like parking strips. Just
Yeah.
can't. It's just
They're just everywhere.
they just like suck the fun out of those plants. Sorry. But I'm going to go on the record and say I don't have a favorite color, and I don't have a favorite color of plants. But I do gravitate to certain colors in the garden. And I
Sure.
think white is an amazing color in the garden because it works with everything. And it just lights up everything, and it looks great at night when you wouldn't see the other colors as much anymore.
Yeah.
What about you, Passy?
I got a toss up. I really like a lot of the orange flowers. They're like those really vibrant orangish reddish kind of flowers that many different plants have. But for like just the color on a plant, it is really rare, but blue is super cool. It's
Oh,
usually
yeah.
like quite a light blue,
Gotta
but
love
there's
the
a bunch of
blue.
ferns that have like a nice blue foliage, and I love those.
Yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
But they are shockingly rare, or at least it's a rare color in nature in general. So, yeah.
Zappy, don't you have a begonia with kind of shiny blue leaves?
Yeah. It's a begonia pavonia. I'm really bad at pronouncing scientific names, and it's really shiny and it's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a prom dress.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Taffeta.
really crazy or different.
There was a recently discovered, I say quotey fingers because I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago there was a research paper that finally named it, but it's Begonia metallicolor, and that is
Ooh.
apparently it's also super blue and very shiny and like super reflective, like even more than Begonia pavonia or whatever the pronunciation is on that one, but it's super hard to get your hands on because after it was
probably
kind of
very
discovered,
expensive, I'm
it's
guessing?
just gone. Yeah, And it was so poached when it was first found. So now,
Oh.
if you want to find one, it's
Wow, that's a
pretty
shame.
hard.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, so sad.
We're going to move on to a less controversial topic. And
Okay, good. Let's
so,
relax on this next one.
yeah, so Hypersphere asks, what do you think about genetic modifications of plants to add nutrients like golden rice? What about Monsanto's use of GMO so that fruit can't grow from seed past one harvest?
Easy question.
A lot less controversial. Zappy, do you want to go first with that one?
Oh, I was just about to ask you. But sure. So I think this is the kind of question that you need to have nuance around, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of feelings on the matter, of course. And I think there's so much potential for it, like the golden rice and stuff, but there's also the way that the companies treat seeds and GMO stuff as intellectual property and then go sue farmers, and that's all messy and ugly, right? Like the technology itself has so much potential and could be used for so much good, and then choices have been made that are harmful to people and to farmers, and you have to be nuanced here, right? Because it's not like, oh, GMOs are evil, or GMOs are good. It's neither of those, right? And so I think it's really cool what the potential is for, and I also really don't like how Monsanto, for example, treated the seed market in India, and that's a really long conversation, and I highly encourage people to research it from reputable sources. So yeah, I think I'll end there.
See?
Sure. I guess for my stance on this is I really like the technology, and I think it has really strong potential, and not only has potential, but it's already showing what it's capable of doing. Golden rice, for instance, I believe it was either vitamin A.
Vitamin A.
Yeah, vitamin A that was being some genes to produce it were spliced into the rice. And that's super important because turns out globally, vitamin A, there's a huge amount of deficiencies with with populations, and that leads to huge health consequences.
Yeah.
And then on top of the vitamin A, they also spliced in a bunch of genes that make the plant coalesce more. I think it's iron as well as iodine and other things into the rice. So it really makes it extremely healthy over regular, just essentially nutrient free rice, basically, because it's more than just carbohydrates then. The big pushback against it was definitely the fact that you had this European Research Institute producing it, and then they turned around and they went to, various farmers throughout other countries and said, you should grow this. And, these farmers looked at them and said, you have no idea, what I'm growing, why I'm growing it, or any of the cultural aspects beside all of these things. And on top of that, there was a huge amount of concern over whether or not the genes in the golden rice would be bred into nature and if they would spread out into other plants, which is a completely fair, totally reasonable suspicion and concern. And that's why I actually kind of like the idea of making it so that certain genetically engineered plants can't produce seed after their first harvest, because then that way, if there's crossover where there's cross-pollination between, a farm of genetically engineered plants with pollen from other plants, going to other plants in nature, they might produce a fruit, but then that fruit doesn't keep going. It doesn't produce this new line, because especially with genetic engineering, it is a technology that's on the same level of, like, I guess, culture changing and world changing as nuclear power, or, inventing the printing press or internet. Like, it is an extremely powerful and useful tool, but it just has to be done really responsibly. And so I think that over time we're going to see hopefully more of it coming out, and it is extremely useful because it also allows us to, we're not making artificial nature, like we're not really playing God. What we're doing is we're taking genes that are already present in other plants and we're putting them into these plants that we want. And I do hope, though, that there's going to be a little bit more government oversight, especially internationally, simply because, once these genes in these plants cross over into nature, you can't take that back. And that's also a huge reason why they are worried about the genetically engineered mosquitoes to stop malaria, is because, you're doing this on a global level. And so anything you're doing on a global level, you want to make sure that there is no room for error. And so, hopefully over time we do start incorporating these things more into our farming and more into our food production, because it'll make us healthier, but also do it responsibly.
It's interesting. GMOs have such a terrible reputation that seed companies that sell to consumers like me, they always advertise that their seeds are non-GMO, even though, of course, they're not GMO.
Yeah.
They can't sell GMO to us.
Yeah, and I mean, to genetically engineer plants, it costs like hundreds of
So much
millions or
money.
even billions of dollars. And so, yeah, I really don't think that someone's like little home run seed company is going to be doing any genetic engineering anytime soon. At least I hope not.
I'm not sure there'd be a profit return on that.
Zero.
Not for a $3 seed packet.
And
Yeah.
there is a lot of genetic engineering with plants that's actually really beneficial that doesn't get talked about, because people always talk about the devil in the room, the Monsanto, because University of California, they do a lot of genetic engineering of plants, and what they've been working on is producing a bunch of citrus plants that don't die out to a certain type of fungus that I can't remember the name of. And they do patent it because it is so expensive. But then what they do is they use the money from the royalties on that patent to do more research, rather than just use it to just pad their pockets. And so that way, as they make useful things, that can fund them to produce just more useful things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I was talking to my partner. I don't remember what plant it was, but it was a copyrighted plant. And he was like, what? He's not actually like that. He was like, why are they copyrighting this plant? It's like, well, because some university spent a lot of time developing it and breeding it up, and they need to support those programs. So, a lot of people just have that, instinctual, why are we copyrighting living things? I was like, well, because that's part of how they get funded. That's part of how we get really cool things.
Yeah, and there's also there's a lot of success stories, especially with genetic engineering for plants, that people just don't know, because it's not as flashy as a big scary thing. Like papayas, for instance. I know I like papayas. I hope other people do too. And with papayas, there was a virus that was actually killing off crops of them globally, and we were at a point, where it was basically like, unless we can figure out a way to stop this virus, humanity has to say goodbye to the papaya. And so some researchers buckled down and they spliced into the papaya plants the genes from the virus for the virus protein coat to be produced on the outside of the cells of the plant. And the reason why they did that is because viruses usually, not always, but usually don't attach themselves and attack cells where there's already a protein of that virus there. Because
That's so cool.
they just, why would they do that? It's a waste of resources to attack a cell that's already infected. And so they didn't have to do this to every papaya, but what they did was by doing this, they've essentially created a papaya plant that can't be infected or won't be infected, and they just use those papayas at herd immunity levels in papaya plantations. And so because of that, you didn't have to have every papaya tree genetically engineered. I think it was like 70 or 80%, but by doing that, the virus, it spread so slowly that eventually it just kind of died off in its tracks. And nowadays we have delicious papayas to thank. And, scientists continue doing that kind of work, which is quietly done in the background. And that's one of those things where I see it being a pretty responsible use of genetic engineering. And it's a huge success story.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's really cool what they can do in the labs.
I'm just waiting for the plant version of Jurassic Park to come out, and
Well, if you want to know about that, this is wildly off topic, but one of the things that's coming up with the Roundup Ready crops is it's inadvertently selecting for weeds that are also resistant to Roundup, and they call them I forget what it's like super weeds, and it's Palmer's amaranth and other things. So it's already happening, and they're already, figuring out workarounds and being like, oh, we have to go back to non-chemical means of weeding. So it's not actually that big of a deal, but
yeah, life finds a way.
You included the there, which was really nice. Thank you. You did the full quote properly. I will say too, for the Roundup resistant crops, Roundup resistant weeds and whatnot. What's really cool about that is if you look at maps where you see countries, proportionally countries, how much Roundup they use, and then also Roundup resistant weeds, you do see in countries where they don't use Roundup basically at all, there's almost no Roundup resistant weeds. And the thing is, if you stop using Roundup over time, the genes necessary to have Roundup resistance, because evolution is a use it or lose it kind of thing, over time they're going to lose that resistance, and then we can go back to just using Roundup if we want.
Yeah, 100%. It's just so funny to me, because I remember when they were first finding it, people were like, oh, and it's like, okay, no, it's not that bad. And it's especially amusing to me that, the ones that don't have that gene when Roundup isn't present will outcompete the ones that do have it. So it's just fun.
I like Space Butler's take on it. Life finds a way.
You gotta watch out. All right, we'll move on to Hypersphere's next question. I have a forest of dead ash trees from the ash borer beetle. What to do? It's kind of dangerous. They're all dead but standing. It sounds like you might want to get them cut down and burn the beetle out. Yeah.
I don't have any advice on that, just because the last thing I want to do is give someone advice on what my opinion is, and then them getting killed by a widowmaker tree because they tried chopping one down.
Oh yeah.
So I'm actually gonna just not say anything for this one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think
almost there, but one thing I would recommend is checking in with your local extension agency, because that's not an issue I have here. But they're going to know what you should do, because there might be things with contamination and protocols and blah, blah, blah. That's rude. Other things. So check with them. They might have a better idea because they are local to your area. And
I think,
don't cut down trees unless you actually know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the only safe thing to do is to hire a professional licensed arborist to do this, because people are killed by falling trees.
Yeah, it's actually my husband for a while was like, why don't you become an arborist? And I was like, because they have one of the highest mortality rates of any profession. So it is dangerous. Yeah, apparently. I looked it up. I was like, okay, never mind. I am staying on the ground. So check with your extension agency, and if they say, yeah, cut them down, then find yourself a certified arborist. Not just anyone, just find a certified arborist.
If it makes you feel any better, we had some work done on trees. A couple were just shaped to remove some branches that were too low and just to give them a more pleasing appearance. And one tree was taken down completely. The tree that was taken down was cheaper to do than the shaping.
Mm-hmm.
So some good news there.
Yeah. Taking down a tree is way easier than pruning it for health.
That's precise, I guess. Well, except for not getting killed thing.
Yeah.
It really sucks though that you lost those ash trees because man, like old ash trees look beautiful.
There's a real problem around the Midwest with the ash borer beetle, and there's if you detect those, people urge you to just take out the tree before it spreads, basically.
Oof.
Yikes.
So yeah, get a professional to check that situation out. So the next question from Hypersphere is Space Butler locked in the basement? So I think I can cover this one. There is actually no lock on the basement door, but I am assured by IG that as soon as the podcast is over, that the traps will be disabled and I will be allowed back upstairs. So you don't have to worry about that.
I will keep my word. I promise.
You can't see it, but he's blinking in Morse code. Help me.
I really can't see it because I'm upstairs and not because of the traps on the stairs, but
this is an audio only podcast, so any messages would through video would be pretty difficult to
wellness checks afterward are appreciated.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Beer Bear asks, is there anything I can do to amend my soil with to prevent nutrient leaching because of heavy rain?
So, you can increase your soil organic matter in general because it creates more bonding sites. But also, I was looking this up, and one of the things that actually has research behind it, and a lot of people in the agricultural arena do, is they will plant a cover crop for over the winter, because then the plant is taking up those nutrients so they're not just loose around the water getting washed away. So planting a cover crop that you plant in fall, it goes to the winter, and then you cut down when it's time to do your spring planting is a solution for that.
We have bears in Zone 13.
Say what?
I believe Bear is in Zone 13, so she does not have a winter.
Well, then just keep growing year round. Just keep growing year round. Keep if you're not already doing they call it a living mulch when it's a cover crop that's during the same time as your main crop. So like an example for my zone would be growing clover in between your apple trees. I have no idea what the equivalent would be in Zone 13. But some non-competing cover crop, living mulch sort of thing might be something to look into. I was thinking, the cold rain that we have here, where it's like during the growing season, we get barely anything, and then when everything's dormant, it just pours. So Zone 13 is a completely different ball of wax.
Yep.
One thing to remember, though, which is
Mm-hmm.
important for rainfall, is it really does depend on like the type of rainfall. If it's like a very sudden, very hard downpour, it will cause nutrient leaching. But then the thing is, if it's just like, those like sprinklings or like a fairly kind of consistent raining, what rain typically does do is the nucleus of a water droplet will be, dust or anything like that, which holds nutrients for plants. And as it falls down to the earth, it can contain things like nitrates and phosphates, which are the most bioavailable form of nitrogen, nitrates. And so, I mean, it can act as like a small balancing act. It's not a ton of nutrients. It's obviously not the same as if you just did a hit of fertilizer, but it's not like rain doesn't bring nothing to the table too. So that is kind of also a thing.
Good news.
Yeah.
All right. Velociraptor asks, what are some important things to keep in mind to improve success in gardening in pots? It's a
When
pretty
you're
general
gardening,
question.
yeah. I think the thing to keep in mind, especially if you're coming from growing in soil, is that once you put it in a pot, you are like way more responsible for it getting the water and nutrients it needs, because it can't escape that pot unless you put it on the soil and it pulls a escape. Because a lot of times, in our yards, we have a lot more flexibility because the plants can send out these huge root systems, and they have those mycorrhizae networks, and that's pulling in moisture, nutrients from all around. And when you're in a dinky little pot, you don't have that. And then the other thing I would say is learn how to water well, because I feel like a lot of people's struggle with houseplants comes down to watering and knowing when to water and how deeply to water. And
Mhm.
I'm sure there's lots of opinions on that, but my favorite is to water from the bottom. So put your pot in a container of water and let it soak up a good amount of water. Like, let it sit there for, 5 minutes maybe for succulents, longer for other things, and then let it drain and then move it back to its normal spot. I would not do that with lithops though. So, it's all about finding out what that particular species needs in that pot condition.
And obviously to have a drainage hole on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And there's factors like having to fertilize because you're just using up the
Yeah.
fertilizer
Yeah.
or
I feel
compost or
like
whatever.
sometimes people forget about that, because I have seen multiple people who were like, my plant is not doing anything. It hasn't done anything for 2 months and it's summer.
Mhm.
Why isn't it doing anything? I'm watering it. And it's like, okay, when was the last time you added fertility? And they're like, what? Because they haven't, right? So just remember that you're responsible for water and fertility. And also, if they're outside, plants in pots are more vulnerable to temperature swings. So keep that in mind too.
See anything to add?
No, not really. You basically covered all of it.
Okay. Exotic asks, how to prevent pests and disease, if that's even possible. So what are your tips to maybe reduce the amount of pests and disease in your plants?
Cassie, you want to go first?
I just recently put a plant of mine out on the balcony, and in case you guys are wondering, it is January, right? And I live in the cold, and so the balcony is the kill zone. I don't expect that plant to survive because it was covered in some spider mites of some species of. So I might
The
not
worst.
be the best person to talk to about
Okay,
pests.
so I will take over this. So most of my background is in outdoor gardening, so there's a lot you can do. The first thing is that just like a healthy person who's getting enough sleep, eating good nutritious food, exercising, doesn't have much stress, is less likely to get sick. It's not 100%, but they're less likely to get sick. A plant that is in appropriate conditions is also less likely to get attacked by pests. Okay, so that's the first thing. Like, I have plants that never get any pests in my house, even if they're right next to something that's a pest magnet, because they're better suited for my conditions. Okay, but on the other hand, there's one species of succulent that I just can't keep the woolly bugs off of, right? Because it doesn't like my conditions. I don't have enough light for it. It's not quite warm enough for it. So it's just always in a slightly weakened state. The other thing is especially for outdoor, and I've seen people who run market gardens and small farms in greenhouses using beneficial insects. And I'm not talking about pollinators here because that's often where people's minds go first, but things like ladybugs and lacewings, you can attract those or purchase them and put the plants that they need around the plants that you're growing, and they will actually, eat the things that are trying to eat your plants. And they have done studies on it, and it's really cool because, I forget which plant it was. It was lettuce, and I think it was alyssum, like sweet alyssum. They interplanted, and in an organic farm setting at a commercial scale, it was worthwhile because they attracted the predators of, I believe it was aphids, and they ate the aphids. So the lettuce crop didn't have that problem. And
awesome.
Yeah, and I know I haven't seen any research to back this up yet, let me say that first, but I know some people who are into more expensive, hard to find houseplants are starting to go out and get beneficial insects to bring into their house, and I'm just a little like, oh, I'm not sure about whether that's a good idea.
Yeah,
But-
I don't think so.
Right? It's like, are you sure you want to do that? And then for a houseplant, one of the big problems people run into a lot is fungus gnats, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about over there, but like basically in Western Washington State, like a year or two ago, it was like literally everyone was like, I have fungus gnats that came from nowhere, and they were just huge wave. And so what works really well for those is BT, and the easiest way to do it is get those little mosquito dunks, because that has the BT that works on mosquitoes and also fungus gnats, and put one of those little discs in your watering can and let it just soak, and then water your plants with that, and that will, in my experience, take care of the infestation. So,
And also the little yellow sticky papers, they're fantastic to reduce the population numbers.
Yeah, and
So
I like
good.
to use those.
So easy.
Sure. Yeah.
I love it.
I just find them a little too gross.
Oh,
But yeah,
really?
they definitely work.
Yeah.
I know it's funny what I find gross, because there's definitely things that I don't find gross that other people do, and then there's that I'm like, ugh.
I mean, I'm not exactly a bug lover, so I get you.
Right.
But also, as not a bug lover, this might be a bit ironic, but something I've learned this past year. One of the best ways to have less pests is to grow more plants, which I love this because, more plants, who doesn't love that? And I'm talking about outdoors, because you will attract more types of insects with having more
Right.
biodiversity. And you
Yes.
basically create an ecosystem, and they'll kind of start taking
Yes.
care of each other.
Yeah, oh my god, yes. So one of the things that comes up a lot is companion planting. And one of the things I wish people would get pointed towards more when they start searching for that stuff is insectiary plants, which are those plants that pull in all those beneficial insects. And then if you have an ecosystem full of predators that are ready to eat your aphids, that's great. But then, of course, you also have to be aware that when you spray a broad spectrum pesticide, your predator species, generally speaking, reproduce at a much slower rate than your sapsuckers and aphids and all the annoying things. So you might knock down the aphid population, but you've wiped out the, lacewings or whatever, and the aphids are going to bounce back much more quickly than the lacewings. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, look into biodiversity and creating habitat for all sorts of insects and plant native plants.
Actually funny that you brought that up, that their predators die back, because if I remember correctly, it was in a population ecology course I was in, we were actually reading up on a case study where the first insecticides that were used in America were used to treat, I think it's cottony spider mites. And yeah, they found exactly that, where they were using it and it killed off a lot of these pest insects, which was awesome. But then they also found that the populations of the predatory insects that could eat these, they were almost wiped out. And then lo and behold, the spider mites bounced back, and the resulting, next wave or population of them was actually more devastating than the first one. And so, especially with, insecticides, you really have to either kill them all, which I tried to do with my mite problem, or you're going to just suffer from the fact that, they're going to bounce back.
Yep.
Because to allude to a previous earlier quote, life finds a way, and that also applies to pesticides.
Yep.
So now we need the insect version of Jurassic Park as well. So
oh
I'll
no,
be
we
waiting for
don't.
that.
We really don't. No.
All right.
I know what that sound means. It's riddle time. I've written some riddles that Space Butler is going to read out. And our audience is going to try to puzzle them out in event chat. Oh, Bubs, thank you. She says favorite time. And if you guys need help, we'll turn to our panel of experts, Passy and Zappy. So here we go.
First riddle. The virtue of patience you must embrace to master this art form of planting in trays.
Oh, before I even had a chance to paste the question, everybody got the answer. It is bonsai.
Yeah, apparently bonsai means planting in trays for some reason. I did not know this.
Oh, Bubs is using cheat code, so what a serious accusation.
Oh, no. Okay, well, let's move on to the next riddle. My fingers are yellow, but my name isn't Bart. I'm the generous sort, so my hands come from the heart.
Nope, not Buddha's hand. Actually, I don't know what Buddha's hand is. What is that?
Oh, I know what Buddha's hand is. That's a good guess, actually. I like that one. Buddha's hand is, if I remember correctly, it's a fruit that is grown en masse in around the Pacific Asia region. I know that it's used a lot in, I want to say, what festival is it now?
Rose got it first. Sorry, Passy. The correct answer is banana. But go ahead, Passy.
Oh, no, it's just an aside.
It is.
Okay.
It's a really neat, weird-looking one. Definitely should look it up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sounds interesting.
Next riddle. My toxin is clever. It kills pests and their spawn, except for the human who consumes it at dawn.
Haha.
I got it.
Haha.
Oh, Pika got it.
Yes, coffee. Coffee indeed.
Correct.
It's delicious. A very delicious toxin. Humans tend to drink a lot of toxins for fun.
And eat them too.
True.
Like
Yes.
peppers.
We're super creative when it comes to that.
Yep.
All right, next riddle.
Yep.
I grow in the sand and can poke out an eye. My syrup is sweet. I'm American as pie.
Oh, there. Oh my God. I think these are too easy. You guys are. It is agave.
Yeah,
think you answered
agave.
that almost like I think if you were like maybe 10 seconds slower at posting the riddle, Lager Bear would have actually had posted the answer before then.
I've never actually had agave nectar. Have you?
It's
Anybody
nothing to
tried
write
that?
home about. As a Canadian, I'm just going to endorse maple syrup.
Oh well, maple syrup
I'm
is terrific.
I'm legally
Yeah.
required to endorse maple
Oh
syrup.
yeah.
If there's a pancake or a waffle, I want maple syrup on it. No
Oh.
question.
Yes.
All right, next riddle here. Eaten for lunch by Victorians prized, fermented to drink in the burbs were despised. Let's see if this question lasts for more
Bear's
than
typing.
5 seconds
Vic is typing.
before it's answered. I think this one's trickier. It must be trickier. There's not
Yeah.
even a guess yet.
We're just throwing things out there now. In the burbs were despised. Cucumbers?
Cross is not the correct answer, but it is very creative.
Huh.
I feel like there's a couple people here that should get this really quickly.
There's not yet. Should we turn to the panel on this one?
What say you, panel?
I was going to guess cucumbers and pickle juice.
Nope.
Dang.
Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. Is it?
Fermented to drink.
Is it rhubarb?
You guys want a clue?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Clue would be
give a
good.
clue.
Okay, so the clue is that this drink is wine.
Someone already said
A
grapes.
wine or? Oh yeah, I think so. Did somebody say wine?
It's not grapes, but you can make a wine out of it.
Oh.
Honey?
Somebody said raisins. That's not the correct answer.
Yeah, honey mead.
Love mead. Hmm.
It's not cider, is it? No, that's not right. Nobody liked eating apples until recently.
So surprised.
Well,
that
they
this
weren't
is
very
the
good
one
until
that's-
recently.
Yeah, apples used to suck. Like,
It's true. It is so true. The heritage varieties of apples are just not.
bad.
They're not good.
They're
The only
just
thing they're
bad.
good for is making cider.
Well, I don't know. It
Another
looks
clue?
like
Time for another clue?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, it's something quite humble and pedestrian that is kind of looked down upon these days.
Man, this one's surprisingly tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, another clue. It is very divisive on our server. Like, we've had serious arguments about this. People are typing.
Pineapples?
Grass.
No.
Herbicide's nice.
Fermented herbicides, probably not not what
that
you want.
sounds like a bad idea.
Not grass bubs, but you're so close. Dandelions! Evie got it.
Oh.
Oh. Oh.
Yes, dandelions.
Yeah.
I have not tried dandelion wine.
I'm curious.
Dandelion wine. Ooh.
A friend of mine made a nectar thingy by picking the flowers and putting in a simple syrup and cooking that down, and that tasted pretty good. But I feel like that's because there was a lot of sugar in there.
Sugar, yeah.
Dandelions, I'm not gonna lie,
Uh-huh.
they're a little bit of a weird plant when it comes to botany stuff. There's like people who study dandelions, they're called taraxicologists because
wow.
Taraxicum is the genus, and that's a super cool name. But then the thing is, they love fighting a lot.
Oh.
So there's a lot of debate in the taraxicology world, which is again a cool name, between even how many species of dandelion there are, where a lot of people are saying there's 60 or around 60.
What?
And then there's some people who are saying,
What?
no, there's like as much as 2,000 species
Oh,
of dandelion.
wow. I
Yeah,
apparently
which
need
is
to
fun.
learn more about dandelions. Are
And I
they
thought there was
things
just
like
yellow
that
and
here?
pink.
Oh man, and it keeps going too. There's so many fun things about dandelions.
Huh.
Like they reproduce by apomixis, which is a botanical way of saying to go F yourself, which is great. Yeah, I can keep going too on
Convenient.
dandelions, but I'm gonna stop because that's nerdy and lame.
We'll have
I'm gonna look up.
the all dandelion episode of the podcast later.
Ooh.
I would
But we'll
love
move
that.
on. We'll move on to the next riddle now. Marquise in the garden, plants in marquise, knights, dames, and royals in the spring breeze. See if chat can get this one.
No, not Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its. I don't even understand. This is not.
I like you thinking outside the box, though, because the answer to this question is not
It's not a plant.
a plant. Yes,
Oh. Well, then I'm out of the running.
it's gardening related, but it's not a plant.
I think they're gonna need a hint.
I need a hint.
Okay. It is an annual event.
I think that's a good hint.
Yeah.
Christmas?
Right, you guys, talk this out. Birthday either, unfortunately. Actually, I don't know when your birthday is. I mean, it does say spring breeze. That's a clue. It's not the cherry blossoms in DC. Literal when I say knights, dames, and
Sorry, I
royals.
had caps lock on by accident. I'm not that enthusiastic about that. There we go.
Nope, not spring showers, not Renaissance fair.
It is gardening related.
It is gardening related.
El Nino. That's a good one.
It's a gardening related event that is in the spring that has distinguished guests of the royal variety.
I don't know.
Oh. Shoot.
I don't think they're
the
going to get it.
spade. No,
They're not going to get it.
They're not going to get it, are they?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Should I keep giving clues? Or are we ready to?
No,
the tile?
reveal the answer.
Okay. We don't have a drum roll sound effect, Dewey,
I
unfortunately.
no, I don't have that queued up. Sorry.
All right. Oh, there we go. The emoji works. It is the Chelsea Flower Show.
Huh.
It is held in sort of the garden area of the Chelsea Hospital, which is a veteran pensioners' home. And the tents set up there are called marquees, and vendors show off their plants in those marquees.
Oh, I've heard of that thing. Isn't that done by like the Royal Horticultural Society or
It
one of
is,
those
yes.
giant gardens in
Yes,
Britain?
it is.
Oh, yeah, I would have never gotten that.
Yeah, me neither.
All right. Moving on to the last riddle here. My bulging physique is growing unseen, and just like the Hulk, I'm trouble when green.
Ooh.
Potato.
We go from super hard to potato.
Potato. We like the potato. Everybody likes the potato.
I love potatoes.
Potatoes.
But you
Do
don't
not
want
eat.
to eat it if it turns green.
Don't
That
eat
is
the
correct.
green potatoes.
Yes.
A little bit of green is okay, I hear, but if you eat a lot of green potatoes, you can get serious stomach upset.
You can also just cut off the green part and eat the rest of the potato.
True.
Wasn't
Sure.
there an Arthur episode about that? Am I the only one?
What's
The cartoon?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I think I'm the only one who knows it, maybe.
Is it about green potato chips?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, there it is.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
I'm not the only one who remembers that. Nice.
Yeah, I think for green potato chips, it probably is not enough the toxin to really hurt you, but the
Yeah,
green potato
definitely
chips
Yeah.
don't taste very good. So
Yeah, because the toxin's bitter anyway, so
yeah, don't get it. Okay, so the potato who won that one? The
Very.
first potato identifier.
Once again, once again, bear. I was going to say once again, potato. Well, it is once again potato. They're the heroes of this episode.
Once again, potato. Yes, indeed. So that's the last riddle. So we've reached the end of the episode here. IG, you want to take us out?
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Passy and Zappy, for your insights and your time. You are superstars.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
remember, life finds a way.